and welcome to a basic millinery techniques video. My name is Ilona, I'm a milliner based in London, and today I'm going to be showing you how I like to use Petersham ribbon on the edge of a felt hat. This is one of my most favourite ways to finish the edge of a wired felt hat. I've seen this done on so many vintage hats and it really is absolutely lovely. Just remember, this is my preferred method. There is no right or wrong way, just whatever works for you. Let's gather the materials and get started. First off, I'm going to start with waxing my thread. This is totally optional, but I do really recommend you do this when you are planning on sewing through felt. I'm going to cut some lengths of thread, measuring it to about twice the length of my forearm. Then, using a block of beeswax, I'm going to grip my thread and drag it through the beeswax. As I do this, I'm applying pressure with my opposite thumb to make sure the thread gets fully coated. I do this about 3 or 4 times on half my thread length, then 3 or 4 times on the other half. Don't forget to make sure that you've coated the middle of the thread and not just the ends. If a crumb of beeswax breaks off as you do this, it's not a problem. Just pick it up and mush it back onto the main block. Next, you are going to want to turn on your iron to the dry hot setting and prep a piece of paper by folding it in half. You could use newspaper here if you wanted to, but I have found that sometimes the ink transfers onto the thread and makes it look a little grubby. Place the thread with the end sticking out inside the paper fold. Press the iron on top and drag the thread through. If I take the iron away, you will notice the excess wax absorb into the paper. Once you've done it one way, make sure you also press the ends of the thread that were sticking out of the paper fold. Over here you can see what a waxed thread looks like once it's been ironed. The red thread, which has been ironed, is straighter and is holding itself up. The white thread, which hasn't yet been ironed, is holding itself up but isn't lovely and straight yet. Sometimes you may wish to iron it through a few times to get it super straight. Now that we've waxed our thread, it's time to ribbon a hat. Once again, for the tools and materials, please see the description box. Before sewing my actual hat, I'm going to demonstrate this for you on a sample with contrasting thread, felt and ribbon. First, put your knot into the underside of your felt and place your ribbon over it. Then I am going to do the tiniest possible stitch in the ribbon. The smaller the stitch, the more invisible it will be. Then travel along the top side of the felt and once again do a tiny stitch through the Petersham ribbon. The aim here is to fix one side of the ribbon to the felt before we do the fold over. My stitch length through the ribbon is less than 1 mm and my travel stitch on the felt is about 1 cm. Now that I've done a few centimeters of stitching, here is the front of my sample. And yes, it does look long and messy, but that's okay because we are about to cover it with the folded ribbon. To do the fold, just fold the Petersham over and hold it in place with your thumb. Using small 1 mm stitches, stitch down the fold. You can decide here if you need the stitches on the other side to be invisible. For simplicity's sake, I'm not hiding my stitches as I'm pretending that this would be the underside of an edge that no one would ever see. But you could hide the stitches if you really needed to by inserting your needle at a diagonal angle, which would allow you to travel through the felt. And now for actually applying this to a hat edge. Today I'm binding the edge of this beautiful teal vintage peach bloom fur felt beret. I've already wired the edge, so I'm going to start by measuring the outside of the round edge with my tape measure. This doesn't have to be exact, but it's always best to err on the side of caution and cut yourself more ribbon than you need. I always add on an extra 2 or 3 centimeters for this, and then an extra 3 centimeters on top of that for a nice tuck at the center back, but we'll get onto this later. Next, I'm curving my Petersham into a C-curve. What this does is it removes puckering and allows you to sew the ribbon down super flat and get a really neat finish. Bear in mind you will only be able to curve a ribbon that consists of natural fibres such as cotton and or viscose. This won't work with a polyester grosgrain. I know that a few of you are watching in America, and I'm really sorry, but I don't know if the terminologies have travelled across the Atlantic. I think grosgrain might be an interchangeable term with Petersham in the States, but just check the fibre content with your local haberdasher when purchasing to be sure. To do the actual curving, press the iron down onto the ribbon on a medium hot dry setting. Apply pressure and use your opposite hand to pull the ribbon towards you. Simultaneously move the iron in a curving motion onto the pulled bit of ribbon. I know this sounds really complicated, but it's actually easier to do than to explain. Now that we've got our C-curved Petersham, we can sew it in. Hopefully you've remembered to mark the centre back of your hat. Pin the end of your Petersham ribbon about 1 or 2 centimeters to the left of your centre back. If you are doing this on a larger brim shape, you might find that you don't need to pin and you can just hold it with your fingers and sew straight away. As I'm doing a small and fiddly beret, I'm going to have to pin all the way around. In fact, if you are confident enough, you could probably even get away with stitching down both sides of the fold at the same time. So no pins and only one pass of stitches. That really is top-level advanced skill. It does take practice, but I can assure you that if you keep trying, you'll get there eventually. Now, I clearly am not at the top advanced level yet, at least not when trying this technique on a new shape for the first time. So I'm going to carry on pinning everything in place. As I pin, I'm making sure I pull the ribbon tight so as to reduce puckering. Once I've got to the end, I'm going to cut off my excess ribbon and tuck under about 2 centimeters to create a join right at the centre back. I forgot to get a close-up camera shot of this, so here's a squiggly diagram that I hope makes sense. As for the stitching, I have already shown you this on my sample, so let's just speed through this bit. But while we're speeding through, notice that I'm wearing my leather thimble. This is a super important habit to get into when hand sewing, especially with felt. I know you are supposed to wear a thimble on your middle finger, but I find it more comfortable on my index finger. I also prefer an open-top leather thimble to accommodate my long nails and tiny fingers, as the metal ones don't come in sizes small enough for me. Right. That's my first pass of stitches done. Now to fold over and stitch again. To finish off, I'm doing my usual loopy knot by leaving a thread loop on the inside of the hat and hooking the needle through the loop a couple of times. And here is the finished edge. The ribbon is nice and tight and pucker free. If you end up using this edge binding technique in one of your hats, share it with me on Instagram @byalonamillinery. I'd love to see all your creations. If you've enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. This really helps me grow and reach a larger audience. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye. I am a whoopsie. I touched the microphone. It's not about commas. Just leave me be.